At that moment, something inside me snapped. For the sake of the children, for both sets of parents and in-laws, I had been continuing my married life with my husband, thinking like that, but I realized it was no longer possible. "I've had enough. Please divorce me." When I clearly spoke those words, my husband momentarily showed a surprised expression. However, he quickly returned to his usual disdainful expression, looking down on me as he opened his mouth. "Divorce? It's more like a dream come true. A wife like you has no value at all." "Are you serious about saying that?" "Obviously, right? Oh, by the way, you'll be the one supporting the kids on the edge of a cliff. I won't pay child support." "Fine, I understand." I readily agreed to my husband's request and left the house. Divorcing my husband and raising 2 children as a single woman, under normal circumstances, might be unsettling, but I was confident. I believed that leaving the house would lead to greater happiness. I could do anything for the sake of my children. And that arrogant husband of mine, he will eventually fall into hell. I am going to punish him severely for all the times he has done whatever he wanted to do. My name is Kira Peterson, and I'm 34 years old. I work for a major furniture manufacturer, and I'm a part-time housewife, also a mother to a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. I am a part of a family of 4, including my husband and 2 daughters, currently living in our apartment. I married my husband, Brian, 6 years ago when I was 28. Immediately after marriage, I became pregnant, giving birth to my daughters at the ages of 29 and 31. While raising them was challenging, those days were fulfilling as I could feel the cuteness of my own children. 2 years ago, when our second daughter, Julia, turned 1 year old, I returned to work. Balancing childcare and work, I aimed to do my best. Just as I was thinking that, things took an unexpected turn. Due to my return to work, the time spent at home significantly decreased, leading to a reduction in the time available for household chores. The house became messy, and meals consisted mainly of supermarket ready-made foods. Although my daughters would eat anything and say it was delicious, the problem lay with my husband, Brian. For some reason, Brian strongly opposed to my return to work. Nevertheless, sustaining our 2 daughters solely on his income was close to impossible. Since I earned more, I had to work hard for the sake of my daughters. However, my husband relentlessly blamed me whenever I resumed work. "Why do we have such lazy meals every day? I work from morning till night, tired and exhausted when I come home." "Why are you talking like that? I work too, and I do household chores, yet you know." "Huh? I have to bow and scrape to my boss, work outside in the scorching heat. It's different from your workplace, which is all laid back." "This is terrible. I am juggling work and all the household responsibilities. If you're complaining so much, then why don't you make dinner, Brian?" "Don't mess with me. Why do I have to do that? Housework is women's work." At the beginning of our marriage, my husband used to say many kind words like, "If you have trouble, let me know," and "I'll help with the housework." However, during my pregnancy with our eldest daughter, Millie, when I asked him to do some simple household chores, he made a truly unpleasant face that I still remember. Even when I asked, he never willingly helped out, just grumbling and complaining. In the end, during my pregnancy and right before giving birth, I handled all the household chores. Even after Millie was born, Brian never contributed to childcare. He would return from work, spend time on himself, and sometimes even complained about our daughters crying. Looking back, our relationship might have been strange from that time. Still, I felt blessed to have a child with the person I loved. I thought I was happy, convincing myself of it every day. However, the situation continued to deteriorate. After the birth of our second daughter, Julia, my husband's attitude became progressively worse. When I returned to work, he insisted, "Women should only take care of the house." Despite financial considerations, I pushed through and resumed work, but it further worsened my husband's mood. Lately, even minor issues would lead him to shout in front of the children. "Hey, why is there trash in my room?" "Huh? I vacuumed just 3 days ago." 3 days ago? Do it every day. You're the one who comes home early and lazes around. I am not lazing around. When I come home, I prepare dinner, give the kids bath. I'm really busy. That's because you have poor housekeeping skills, right? Be stricter with yourself. What if the kids became lazy adults like you? Huh? Not only does he shout, but lately he's been looking down on me more. The daughters may not fully understand the meaning of their father's outbursts, but they can sense the tension between their parents. I asked him again and again, if you want to say something, do it when the children aren't there, but he would not listen to me. In the end, I was scolded and belittled every day. I could only try desperately to hold back my tears so as not to worry my daughters. Time passed, and for the past few months, peace prevailed, as my husband had continuous overtime commitments. Still, to avoid complaints, I regularly cleaned his room, and during one vacuuming session, I found something under the bed. This receipt. The receipt that fell out was about 2 days old. It indicated 2 customers and a considerable amount spent. Upon researching the restaurant name on my phone, it turned out to be a high-end French restaurant located a bit away from my husband's workplace. Could it be possible for him to go to such a place with just a colleague? Moreover, 2 days ago, he claimed to be working late and returned home after midnight. If it's just a casual acquaintance, he could have mentioned it. Something is strange. Even though he claims to be working overtime every day and coming home late, could it be that he's cheating on me, hiding it from me? If that's the case, I need to gather evidence carefully. Considering the children, I need to handle this cautiously. The next day, I applied for a half-day off at work and headed to a detective agency in the afternoon. I decided to request a background check on my husband and see how he was doing for the time being. After that, I acted like my casual self to avoid my husband noticing that I was suspicious of him. 2 weeks later, when I went to hear the investigation results, as expected, the outcome was bad. My husband was cheating. The other person is a junior colleague at the same company, and she apparently has a fiancé. My husband, under the pretext of overtime, was in a romantic relationship with a woman who was about to get married. Some of the photographic evidence given to me by the investigator ranged from walking arm in arm to kissing on the street. In fact, there were even clear pictures of them entering sleazy locations. Despite my feelings for my husband cooling off, I was still shocked. I never thought he was really cheating. I suspected it, but when reality hits you like this, it's quite harsh. But for Millie and Julia, I have to do something. With evidence of the affair, I slowly prepared for what was to come without my husband's knowledge. To be prepared for anything, I started packing the minimum necessities. Over the course of about a month, while steadily making preparations for the divorce, my husband, who knew nothing, continued unruly behavior. "You're a failure. You're a stupid wife. Our marriage was a mistake," etc. insults and abuses towards me had become a daily occurrence, tormenting my heart every day. Still, I endured it because I had confidence that I could divorce at any time. But on this day, my husband finally did something unforgivable. While the daughters were playing happily, he slammed the table, raising his voice, and shouted, "Hey, you've been noisy for a while now. Don't irritate me on my precious day off." Upon hearing those words from my husband, my younger daughter, Julia, began to cry. Although Millie is not crying, her eyes were filled with many tears. I hugged the two daughters to shield them from seeing their father, and after that, I'm sure my husband glared at me. Oh my God, they were both just playing around. I'm saying it's noisy. Jeez, at least take them outside on the day off. Why do you think only according to your own standards? If you're going to say that, then help with housework on your days off. Why should I? You're a lazy woman who can't handle housework and childcare. Lazy? How can you say such things so casually? Our current life is sustained by the cooperation of both husband and wife. Huh? Don't get carried away. You can live because I'm here. Know your place. My husband is still unaware that I earn more. That's why he can look down on me so confidently, even in front of our children. Everything has become so indifferent, and I've lost the will to argue. Seeing me like this, my husband, perhaps thinking I'm intimidated, starts speaking ill of me. Finally, he says to me, "Marriage with you is a dark history for me. Be grateful that I even married a worthless woman like you, you trash." At the moment, something inside me snapped. For the sake of my children, our parents and in-laws, I had thought that enduring married life with them was the right thing to do. But now I realized it was impossible to continue. If I stayed with this person any longer, I would lose myself. My deterioration would inevitably affect my daughters. I had to end this relationship for good. I've reached my limit. Please, let's get a divorce. When I clearly stated this, Brian looked surprised for a moment. However, he quickly returned to his usual disdainful expression, looking down on me as he opened his mouth. Divorce? It's more like a dream come true. A wife like you is worthless. Is that really what you think? Of course. Oh, by the way, make sure you support the two brats on your own, okay? I won't pay any child support. How can you speak about your own daughters like that? They're just noisy brats, stating the facts. I've never had any affection for them. I see. Understood. Realizing that staying with them any longer wouldn't bring happiness, especially for my daughters, I decided to take action. I grabbed the luggage I had prepared in advance and left the house with my daughters. I handed him the pre-signed divorce papers, and without hesitation, he smoothly filled them out. Divorcing my husband and raising my children alone under normal circumstances would be a cause of concern. However, I was convinced if I left home, I could be happier than I am now. I believed that, for the sake of my children, I could strive for anything. And that arrogant husband of mine would inevitably fall into hell. Just wait and see. I'm going to punish him severely for all the times he's done whatever he wanted to do. Vowing to take more revenge on my husband, I left home with my daughters in tow. On the way, I submitted the divorce papers at the city hall, cutting ties with my husband, and headed to my parents' house. My father and mother were greatly surprised when I returned home with a large suitcase. Hey, what's going on all of a sudden? While my mother put the girls to bed, my father spoke to me. I explained the events with Brian so far in order. In front of my parents, Brian was a good husband, so my father seemed surprised at his true nature. But they soon realized the real meaning of my return to my parents' house. My father looked me straight in the eye and said clearly, "So, I just need to take care of the paperwork." "Yeah, I want you to prepare the documents." "Got it. I'll start on it tomorrow." Actually, the apartment where we as a couple had been living was one of my father's properties. Although it was technically rented under Brian's name, my father had been covering the rent, and we were living there rent-free. However, there was no point in continuing to bear the rent for a man who was neglecting his family due to infidelity. So, I asked my father to officially demand rent payments from my husband. Having gathered evidence for the affair, I decided to claim compensation and child support through a lawyer. With this, I made preparations for the divorce while commuting from my parents' house to work. 2 weeks later, thinking that some action might be happening soon, my phone, as expected, lit up. When I checked the screen, the caller was indeed my ex-husband, Brian. "Yes? Hello?" As I answered the call, Brian seemed flustered as he spoke. Hey, what's going on? I received some weird documents, something about compensation." "Ah, it seems they arrived safely. That's the compensation for your affair, you know." "What? I didn't cheat or anything." "Just so you know, the evidence is already gathered, so there's no escaping from it. And soon you'll receive another set of documents." "Huh? Another set of documents?" "You haven't forgotten, have you? Starting from now, you'll be responsible for paying the rent for that room." "What?" From Brian's reaction, it seemed he hadn't realized it. He asked me with a raised voice, "Wait a minute, rent? The house was given to us by your father." "That's not true, right? My father just lent it to us out of goodwill." "This is... So, as long as I stay in this house, I have to pay the rent?" "That's right. I assume you understand, but considering the good location and relatively recent construction, the rent isn't cheap. Can you afford it with your salary?" "Is it really that high?" Brian, perhaps after checking the market on his phone, lamented in the background. "There's no way I can afford this." It seemed that he had finally realized his situation, and in a desperate tone he began pleading. "I'm breaking up with my mistress, so come back to me. Let's start over again." Desperately seeking help, he pleaded, but I firmly rejected him. "Start over? Don't be ridiculous. After all the hurt you caused me and our daughters? How dare you say such things? Do you truly understand what you've done? I can't forgive you for neglecting our family more than any affair." Well, I'm sorry. I apologize, so please." "Huh? What value does your apology have now? Regardless of words you say, nothing resonates anymore. I have no intention of restarting anything with you as a couple." We were at least a married couple, a family, right?" "Who said to our daughters, I've never had any affection for them?" I became resolute with those words. "You have no qualifications to be a father. You're also a bad influence on our daughters. Never involve yourself with us again." Emotions exploded, and towards the end, I think my voice trembled. Even so, I decisively hung up the phone. Later, Brian apparently moved out of the apartment and into another. Unfortunately, his relationship was exposed to his mistress's fiancé, and he faced another compensation claim. Ironically, the woman involved in the affair chose to reconcile with her fiancé, not Brian. All that remained for Brian was compensation for 2 people and child support until our daughters reached adulthood. It's probably a matter of time before his affair is exposed at work. It's almost impossible for him to continue his carefree lifestyle. Even so, I feel no sympathy. I hope he suffers as much as possible from now on. On the other hand, I am happily spending my days with my daughters with the support of my parents at home. The commute takes a bit of time, but there's nothing more reassuring than the support of my parents. My parents greet my daughters with smiles every day. The smiles of my daughters are increasing, and I am convinced that my choice was not wrong. I am grateful to my parents for welcoming us so warmly, and I want to continue pouring lots of love into my daughters in the future.
I opened the entrance and was speechless at the scene in front of me.
Long time no see. Are you well?
Because there stood my husband, smiling as if nothing had happened. 3 years ago, I was filled with anxiety and fear during my first childbirth. Without any concern for me, my husband suddenly disappeared. Why is he here now? Why did he appear after all this time? Various questions floated in my mind, but before I could ask, he spoke first.
I came to pick up our child, you understand, right?
Huh? What are you talking about?
I'm the father, and I have the right to raise that child.
What I felt was not shock or despair, but clear anger. Are you kidding me? Who gave you the right to take this child? Immediately afterward, revenge against my husband would be accomplished in an unexpected way. My name is Elizabeth. I'm 30 years old and working as a pharmacist. I got married about 3 months ago. I finally tied the knot with Anton, my husband, after 2 years of dating. We met at a mixer. I was shy and didn't fit in, and Anton was the one who gently approached me.
So, is this your first time? It can be nerve-wracking.
Yes.
Elizabeth, right? Do you have any hobbies?
I might be a bit introverted, but I like Japanese anime.
Eh? That's great. I've started watching recently, too. If you have any recommendations, let me know.
Whether it was genuine or just to liven up the atmosphere, I still don't know. But the fact remains that I was saved by his kindness. After exchanging contacts, we started meeting regularly. After 2 years of dating, he proposed, and we became a married couple. One day he said to me,
Elizabeth, sorry, but would it be okay if you worked even after we get married until we have children?
Of course. I also like my job. But why would you ask such a thing?
Well, if you wanted to be a full-time housewife after marriage, I'd feel bad. I didn't mention it, but my salary isn't that great.
Eh? Really? His salary situation was something I heard for the first time. Certainly I had never paid much attention to it before. All our dining out and trips were split evenly, and we never indulged in luxuries, so there was never an occasion to spend a large sum of money. That's why I hadn't noticed until now. But I didn't worry too much about his income. I had my income as a pharmacist, and my savings were sufficient. Besides, Anton had been living alone in an apartment up until we got married, so he should have had enough income to sustain himself. Whether it was a dual income or whatever, I was happy as long as I could be with him. With a smile, I responded to my husband, who seemed apologetic as he broached the subject. Anton, don't worry so much. It's okay. The hospital where I work offers excellent benefits. I also receive an income that allows us to save, so rest assured.
Elizabeth, you're a pharmacist. That's really amazing. I feel sorry for causing you trouble, though.
What are you talking about? Cooperation is natural for a married couple, right?
Thank you, Elizabeth. I'll do my best so that we can have a child whenever it happens.
Thank you. At that time, I was 28 years old and my husband was 31. Unlike men, women have a biological clock. According to information I read earlier, the likelihood of natural pregnancy significantly decreases for women over 35. As an only child, I had always admired having siblings, so I wanted multiple children. Thinking about having 2 or 3 children in the future, it seemed best to start early. For the sake of the children we would eventually have, I decided to work hard. 2 years passed, and we have been managing our married life while planning for the future. We decided not to have children until we had saved a certain amount. We tried to be frugal and avoid unnecessary expenses. Initially, Anton was firm about this, but in the past 6 months, he had been a bit lax. This was because he recently changed departments, and in the new department, there were frequent office drinking parties. Due to that, he started going to drinking parties after work more often. As a result, our expenses increased, and our time as a couple gradually diminished. Then, one day, feeling something wrong with my health, I went to the hospital, and lo and behold, I found out I was pregnant.
Congratulations, you're pregnant.
Upon hearing the doctor's words, tears welled up in my eyes. Really?
Yes, you're already in the 7th week based on the size. Would you like to hear the heartbeat?
Yes. I could see the small figure of our child on the ultrasound, and its heart was indeed beating. Even though it was so small, it was alive. Our baby, Anton's and mine, had truly come to us. Our savings had reached the target, and we were prepared for pregnancy at any time. But I hadn't expected to get pregnant so soon, and tears overflowed with surprise and joy. That night, when my husband returned from a drinking party, I immediately brought up the conversation. Anton, I have something important to tell you.
Something important?
My husband had returned quite drunk from the party. Ideally, I should have waited until he was sober to talk, but I couldn't keep quiet due to my excitement. I showed the ultrasound photo to my husband, whose face was slightly red. Look, a baby is growing inside my stomach.
Huh? Elizabeth, are you pregnant?
Yes, I'm around 7 weeks now.
Seriously? Wow, I'm so happy. Thank you, Elizabeth.
My husband opened his arms and hugged me. He smelled a bit of alcohol, but I was genuinely happy that he was pleased. However, I hadn't realized yet that this pregnancy would significantly change our married life. Since the pregnancy was confirmed, my physical condition had worsened. Constant nausea and dizziness plagued me. Even if I felt hunger and ate something, I would vomit immediately. I could barely manage to eat refreshing fruits. This was the first time I had experienced something like this, and it was breaking my spirit. Why do I have to go through such a tough time? Many people suffer from morning sickness during pregnancy, but at that moment, it was so challenging that I couldn't help but wonder, why me? Due to the severity of morning sickness, I had to take time off from work. I had expected Anton to be supportive, but it seemed that was not the case. What was more challenging than morning sickness was Anton's attitude.
Are you throwing up again? I really don't want to come home.
Upon returning home, my husband threw such cold words at me as I battled nausea in the bathroom. A mix of shock and anger overcame me, and I found myself responding tearfully. Why would you say something like that? Even though I'm struggling so much, I'm doing my best to raise our baby.
Pregnant woman, all go through this, Elizabeth. You're not special, so endure it a bit.
Why are you saying it like that? We're a married couple. Can't you say we'll work through this together?
Huh? I am working through it with you. You're just throwing up all the time and can't even do the housework properly. Look at you, eating out like this.
It's not about that. Can't you help with the housework a bit?
I work outside all day, and I'm tired. Since you're off work, can't you handle the household chores?
With those words, my husband, sighing, headed to the bathroom. The sound of the door closing firmly made me feel the distance between us. Why does he speak like that? I can't even function properly because I'm in so much pain. In this state, I can't possibly do housework. Eventually, I entered a stable period and my morning sickness calmed down, but my relationship with my husband took a turn for the worse. Conversations gradually decreased, and he didn't bother coming to the hospital on the day of the child's birth. Even on the day of discharge, my husband didn't come to pick me up, and I reluctantly returned home by taxi. As soon as I opened the door, I immediately felt something was wrong. What is this? Most of the things in the room, or more precisely, my husband's belongings, were gone. Valuables were also completely gone. No matter how many times I called, there was no response from him. When I contacted my in-laws, they were very surprised, but both of them claimed not to know where my husband was. Contemplating whether to file a missing person report with the police, I received a message from my husband.
I don't want to be with a failure like you anymore.
That was the message he sent. He no longer wanted to continue being married to me. 2 months later, while finding time between childcare to clean the room in order to send my husband's remaining belongings to my in-laws, I came across a completed divorce agreement. I didn't know when he had prepared it, but it seems he had the intention of divorce for quite some time. Continuing to organize the belongings, I found an old laptop that my husband used before. When I opened it, there hid a shocking truth. Is it a lie? Anton was cheating, right? The computer revealed a large exchange of emails with the affair partner, along with many intimate photos stored in a folder. All of them were dated just before I became pregnant, and he was likely cautious, deliberately choosing to communicate through the computer. As our relationship deteriorated during my pregnancy, he probably started exchanging messages more openly on his phone. Perhaps he didn't expect me to open this computer, or maybe he had forgotten its existence altogether. He must have been deeply involved with the other person. Thinking about it, everything became inconsequential. I saved evidence of the affair, signed the divorce agreement, took it to the court promptly, and practically put an end to the marital relationship with Anton. This is fine. I'm responsible for raising this child. That's what I decided. 3 years had passed since I gave birth to my daughter Charlotte, and when Anton disappeared without a trace. Charlotte, now 3 years old, had been improving her speaking skills.
Hey, Mom, I want to eat hamburgers today.
That sounds good. Let's have hamburgers tomorrow night.
Really? Yay! I'll help with cooking.
You'll help? Thank you, Charlotte. You're such a good girl. Holding hands, we walked from the nursery to home. While preparing dinner at home, the intercom rang. Yes? What? Why? Opening the door, I was left speechless at the sight before me. It was because there stood my ex-husband, smiling as if nothing had happened. 3 years ago, I was anxious and fearful about giving birth for the first time. He disappeared, without a care for my well-being. Why was he here now? Why did he suddenly appear? Various questions arose, but answers were nowhere to be found. Before I could ask, he spoke.
Long time no see. How have you been?
What's this? Why now?
There's no need to say it. I've come to pick up our child. You understand, right?
What are you talking about?
I don't need to say it. I have the right to raise my child,
Anton declared, and what I felt at that moment wasn't shock or despair, but anger. Are you kidding me? Who said this child belongs to you? I said to him. Go back. As I was about to say it clearly and clenched my fist, my daughter Charlotte spoke first.
Hey, Mom, who's this uncle?
In response to our daughter's words, my ex-husband froze with a forced smile and tried to engage with her.
What are you saying, Shirley? I'm your dad, right?
It's not Shirley, it's Charlotte. I don't have a dad.
Don't say that. I'm really your dad.
Someone who gets my name wrong can't be my dad. I don't like uncles. Go away.
What?
Rejected completely by our child, Anton was taken aback. Then he took out his smartphone and showed it to our daughter.
Come on, Charlotte. Do you want toys? I'll buy you anything.
No need. Mom already bought me something.
But there are many new toys now. How about this toy that can make ice cream?
I don't need it. I prefer going to the park with Mom. Anton was defeated by our daughter's words. Then he turned to me, desperately pleading.
Elizabeth, please, just let me in. Let's live together again.
What are you talking about? You left on your own and now you're saying this?
At that time, I didn't have confidence to be a father. But after 3 years, I finally made up my mind.
You didn't have confidence to be a father? So you left because of that?
That's right. There was no other reason. I still love you, Elizabeth and Charlotte.
Is that so? Well, too bad. We don't love you, and we don't need you anymore. I decisively told him, and his face, looking stunned, was staring at me.
Elizabeth?
I didn't hesitate to tell him off when he let out a small sound. Do you really think you haven't been exposed? I know everything about your affair and leaving me for that woman. What do you want now? You left when I was struggling, cheated on me, and abandoned us even after Charlotte was born. You've got to be kidding me. Who would live with a scum like you?
No, Elizabeth, I've already broken up with that woman.
I don't care about that. When I was suffering, you were having an affair. You abandoned Charlotte after she was born. That's all that matters. Whatever you say now, I don't believe you, and I don't have even an ounce of trust in you. If you understand, never come near us again. Never appear in front of us again.
No, don't. I don't want it. Don't abandon me. No.
Ignoring my ex-husband, who collapsed on the spot, I called his parents. About 30 minutes later, my in-laws arrived at my house. They took the bewildered Anton, apologized to me several times, and left. Afterward, I contacted a lawyer to claim alimony. It was difficult before because I didn't know where he was, but now that he's at his parents' house, there's nothing to worry about. After a little investigation, I found out that his affair partner was also back at her parents' house. I decided to claim compensation from her as well, and make them pay in one lump sum. In addition to the compensation for the affair, I also claimed child support for Charlotte. I intend to make him pay it until she becomes an adult, no matter what it takes. Anton, who was lump sum billed for compensation and child support, ended up shouldering debt. Now, he's working multiple part-time jobs and searching for a new job. He is under the watchful eyes of his parents, helping with household chores at his parents' house, and seems to have no freedom. But all of this is his own doing. When I think about the consequences of his actions, I can't even sympathize with him. On the other hand, as for me, I submitted a request for a job transfer and decided to move. Of course, with the intention of never meeting Anton again. I am now steadily progressing with preparations for the move, as I will be relocating to a hospital within the same network. Sorry, Charlotte. It's just going to be you and me. Feeling a sudden sense of guilt for taking away the presence of a father, I spoke to my daughter, who was packing next to me. But she smiled brightly and said, "It's totally fine. I love Mom the most, so being with you is all I need." The most? Yup. So, if I can be with Mom, that's enough for me. Thank you, Charlotte. I love you very much too. My daughter hugged me tightly, with enthusiasm. In response, I embraced her back strongly. I will make her happy no matter what, and we will be happy together. With that conviction, I smiled warmly, holding my daughter's hand. Housework is your job as the daughter-in-law, isn't it? Why do I have to clean? Don't get spoiled just because we live together. You're shameless. I can't believe it. I need you to vacuum. That's the reaction I got when I asked for help. Actually, I injured my leg falling down the stairs recently. I can't do household chores and childcare properly anymore. My mother-in-law said she would help me. So I took her up on her offer and we started living together recently. That's when the strain on my leg increased. I asked my mother-in-law to vacuum for me, but she refused with a very clear frown on her face. But it hasn't fully healed yet. I hope you could help a little, Mom.
You say it's not fully healed, but you can move just fine now. It's not like you can't do it. It's because you keep depending on others that your recovery is slow.
Saying that, my mother-in-law refused to help. I sighed and thought I would just do it myself.
Sighing so conspicuously, you're quite a disrespectful daughter-in-law. Didn't I take care of you a lot when you were injured? You forget the favors people do for you as soon as you feel a little better.
My mother-in-law said this with a self-righteous tone. She used to be so kind before we started living together, but as soon as we started living together, she stopped helping with anything. She even started making sarcastic remarks. I never knew she could be like this. I felt disheartened, but slowly began to vacuum the whole house. My mother-in-law shouted, "It's so noisy," at me several times, but I pretended not to hear. My irritated mother-in-law eventually left the house to go somewhere. My mother-in-law returned around dinner time. My husband and daughter were also at the dining table. She came back with both hands full, looking satisfied.
"Let's eat this instead of such a simple meal."
When I looked inside the bag that my mother-in-law placed on the table, I found steak, caviar, and even foie gras. These are all high-quality ingredients, aren't they? What's going on here? When I asked, my mother-in-law smiled mischievously and began,
"Well, you see..."
I turned pale upon hearing what she started to say. My name is Eleanor, and I'm a full-time housewife. I live with my husband Jack and our preschooler daughter Mia, and we're known as a friendly and close-knit family in the neighborhood. I met my husband at a company-sponsored social event several years ago. Since he had a demanding job, I decided to quit my job and take care of the household and childcare. One day, I injured myself falling down the stairs, and my leg is in pain, making it difficult to manage childcare and housework as I'd like. Jack, can't you take a break from work?
I'm currently swamped, and I can't afford to take days off.
My family lives far away, so it's not easy for them to come and help. That's why I asked my mother-in-law, who occasionally visits us because she lives nearby, to come and assist.
"Eleanor, are you alright? You had quite a serious injury, didn't you? It must have been painful."
My mother-in-law was very concerned about my injuries. "I'm sorry, Mom. Thank you for your help."
"It's alright. Leave it to me. Let Mia play with her grandmother. Then I'll go grocery shopping and prepare dinner."
My mother-in-law, who had come to our rescue, took over for me since I couldn't move. She took care of our daughter, prepared meals, and even cleaned the house. Having my mother-in-law here was a tremendous help. I had grown quite comfortable with her presence. So when my husband proposed the idea of living together, I agreed, without hesitation. Our house was a single-family residence, and we had plenty of room. I thought her being here would make household chores and childcare much easier. I had no idea how wrong I was. Once my mother-in-law and I decided to move in together, it didn't take long. My husband's family had been renting their previous place, so they vacated it swiftly, and my mother-in-law moved in right away. In the beginning, when we started living together, things seemed to be going smoothly. However,
"Household chores are your responsibility as the daughter-in-law, aren't they? Why do I have to do the cleaning? Just because we live together, don't get too comfortable. It's really quite audacious, and that's just not acceptable."
Since my leg hadn't fully healed, I asked my mother-in-law to vacuum for me, but she openly refused, making a displeased face. I couldn't help but feel exasperated. But I'm still not completely healed. Mom, can you please help a little?
Even if you say you're not completely healed, you can move just fine now. It's not like you can't do it. It's because you keep depending on others, like this, that your recovery is slow.
Saying that, my mother-in-law refused to help. When we had just started living together, she used to assist with household chores, but even that became sporadic. Recently, she hardly did anything at all. As for my husband, ever since we moved in together, he's grown quite dependent on his parents and seems to have reverted to a more childlike state. No matter what I said, I couldn't get through to my mother-in-law, as my husband always took her side. I asked my mother-in-law to at least clean up the areas she had made a mess in, but she wouldn't listen. Unable to do anything else, I would let out a sigh and continue to handle all the household chores by myself, as I always did. This seemed to irritate my mother-in-law even more.
Sighing so conspicuously, you're quite a disrespectful daughter-in-law. Didn't I take care of you a lot when you were injured? You forget the favors people do for you as soon as you feel a little better.
My mother-in-law was known for her habit of acting superior and playing up her past kindness. But ever since we started living together, she stopped helping with anything. She started making sarcastic remarks, and I couldn't believe what kind of person she had become. I felt disheartened, but slowly began to vacuum the whole house. My mother-in-law shouted,
"It's so noisy!"
at me several times, but I pretended not to hear. My irritated mother-in-law eventually left the house to go somewhere. My mother-in-law returned around dinner time. My husband and daughter were also at the dining table. She came back with both hands full, looking satisfied.
"Let's eat this instead of such a simple meal."
When I looked inside the bag that my mother-in-law placed on the table, I found steak, caviar, and even foie gras. These are all high-quality ingredients, aren't they? What's going on here? When I asked that, my mother-in-law smiled mischievously and began.
"Well, you see..."
My mother-in-law, who had gotten angry with me for vacuuming loudly, had gone to a famous restaurant in her car and purchased these items for takeout, she explained.
"Because both Jack and Mia are always eating such frugal meals, aren't they? Don't you want to give them something good to eat once in a while?"
That's my mom for you. Experienced homemakers have a different perspective. Let's dig in right away.
I interrupted my enthusiastic husband and asked my mother-in-law, "How did you afford this? You're on a pension, so you shouldn't have the means, right?"
"Well, that's right. So I used the money I found in that shelf over there."
I looked at the spot where my mother-in-law pointed and felt a sense of dread. I hurriedly opened the shelf and checked the envelope inside, but there wasn't a single dollar left. "Mom, this is our food budget for this month. Using it without permission is like stealing."
"Putting money in such a conspicuous place is the wrong thing to do, you know. It's your fault, Eleanor, isn't it?"
She tried to shift the blame onto me, and my husband sided with her, claiming it was because of my lax management. No matter how much I protested, they wouldn't listen, and I ended up paying for the remaining food expenses this month. Then one morning, I woke up to find my daughter wetting the bed.
"I'm sorry."
"Oh, that's unusual. Don't worry, it'll be fine after we wash it." My daughter had finished her toilet training, and she would wake us up when she needed to use the bathroom at night, so I found it unusual. I thought that occasional bedwetting was normal for her age, but my mother-in-law and husband scolded her for it.
Mia, what are you doing? Bedwetting is such a shameful thing.
Oh no, Mia's pajamas and sheets are all wet. Don't come near, it smells.
Mia was left in tears by their cold words. It was such a cruel thing to say to young Mia. Such comments about the smell were definitely not something a father should say. I comforted our crying daughter, but my mother-in-law interjected.
Spoiling her like this from a young age isn't good.
Despite her words, Mia's bedwetting issue persisted. She continued wetting her bedding multiple times. I wondered if there might be an illness. I became anxious and took her to several hospitals, but there was no sign of illness, and the cause remained unknown. It's strange because she doesn't wet the bed or have accidents at kindergarten. I thought maybe I should consult with her teacher next time. As I was contemplating this, the teacher called me in the following day, saying something seemed off with our daughter, and that it would be best if I came in to discuss it. Mia, what's wrong? With a face on the verge of tears, our daughter looked at the teacher and, prompted by her, began to speak hesitantly.
Mom, you see, it's about Grandma.
In summary, her simple words conveyed the following story. Before we started living together, my mother-in-law had come over to visit while I was out. During that time, my husband and my mother-in-law were discussing proposing the idea of us all living together. She happened to overhear their conversation from the top of the stairs. I had indeed fallen and gotten injured while coming down the stairs, and the cause was that the mat on the stairs had been changed to one with longer fibers, making it more slippery. I see. Mia's bedwetting was rooted in the anxiety she felt after hearing about that plan. Why didn't you tell Mom right away? Mia, while crying, replied,
Because if I told Mom, she would suffer more. Grandma told me not to say anything when she found out.
Upon hearing that my daughter had been threatened by my mother-in-law, I trembled with anger and held my crying daughter tightly. It was tough for you, wasn't it? You don't have to worry anymore. Mom won't give up, okay? I comforted her like that. I couldn't forgive Mia being threatened and even causing me harm. I guess they intended to take advantage of me when we started living together, but I won't let that happen. Just watch, I'll give it back double. From then on, I squeezed in some exercise between household chores, and my body gradually improved after my injury healed. My mother-in-law continued to do nothing, but because she kept pushing housework onto me, I could somewhat move at my own pace, which made it easier to find time. I also set up recording devices throughout the house that I had bought at an electronics store. Around that time, my husband was coming home late frequently, and my mother-in-law often claimed she was going shopping. So it was easy to set up the devices. Unaware of these actions, my mother-in-law continued to exploit me. Then one day, she asked me to make a reservation at a popular restaurant and said she and my husband were going there alone. My husband and mother-in-law went to that restaurant all as planned. I seized the opportunity. I contacted someone to take care of my daughter temporarily during the weekend. And then...
This restaurant is delicious, isn't it? I'm so lucky to be here with my kind son.
I'm just being a dutiful son, right? It's not easy to get a reservation here, you know. The room is spacious and Eleanor comes in handy once in a while.
As the two of them were enjoying their course meal in a private room, suddenly the door swung open and a couple appeared. Upon seeing these individuals, my husband's eyes widened and he became flustered.
Mr. Davis, why are you here? It's been a while, Jack. Mr. Davis, are you sure you're not in the wrong room?
It's not a mistake. I interjected from behind, and behind me a middle-aged woman with a lawyer's badge followed.
Eleanor, what's going on?
Today, Mr. and Mrs. Davis are here with their lawyer, so I reserved a private room for 6. My matter-of-fact statement seemed entirely natural. Both my husband and mother-in-law appeared bewildered, glancing around in confusion. Mr. Davis was a senior colleague at my husband's company and had even organized the mixer when my husband and I first met.
Why would you do such a thing?
Because you were cheating with Mr. Davis's wife, Chloe. His senior colleague's wife, Chloe, standing beside her husband, turned pale and looked like she might faint at any moment. My husband also quickly changed his complexion. The other day, in order to confirm my daughter's story, I set up recording devices throughout the house. It became clear that my husband had been making secret phone calls there repeatedly, addressing someone as Chloe in a friendly manner. I had heard that name before, but it turned out to be his senior colleague's wife. I remembered it because I attended his senior colleague's wedding last year with my husband. I took the senior colleague's contact information from my husband's phone and contacted him to confess about the affair. It appears that his senior colleague also suspected his wife of having an affair, so we decided to work together.
It's a misunderstanding. I wasn't really having an affair.
Oh, there's no need for excuses. We already have testimony from the wife. Upon hearing this, my husband was taken aback, saying, His eyes widened, and he was left speechless. Truth be told, the day before I had called his senior colleague's wife to meet. Initially, she feigned ignorance, but when I advised, you should just be honest, you know there's compensation and everything, right? When I hinted at reducing the compensation, she opened up and talked freely. She and my husband were colleagues from work, and their relationship turned this way while they were discussing their married lives. When I boldly stated I had evidence through recordings and testimonies, my husband knelt down and begged his senior colleague for forgiveness.
I'm very sorry. I'm sorry, but I can't forgive you. I've already sent a registered letter to the company, so be prepared for the consequences from HR.
The senior colleague coldly pushed away my husband. Jack, we're getting a divorce, and I'll be sure to get alimony and child support. When the lawyer conveyed the amounts, my husband seemed desperate and clung to me.
Eleanor, I'm begging you. I'll kick my mother out and we can start over again.
Enough with the jokes. I've already recorded your verbal abuse towards me, so I can claim compensation. Above all, I can't imagine starting over with someone who threatens my daughter. I stated it firmly. Also on the recorder, I also have evidence of your mom's theft. When my mother-in-law heard this, she trembled noticeably. Perhaps she had something to hide, so she kept silent for a long time. But I won't let her off the hook either. Not only did you steal money from the house, but you also sold the boat model that Jack cherished so much on a flea market app, didn't you? You must have been spending recklessly with that money. When I mentioned this, it seemed like my husband didn't know about it. He became furious with his mom. His mother yelled,
Spending money on such junk! You shouldn't have cheated in the first place.
But my husband also.
Mom, you must have known about the affair too. Don't criticize me while ignoring your own actions.
And so a parent-child argument began. My mother-in-law was about to grab my husband by the collar, but the lawyer I had on standby calmly called the police. Afterward, his senior colleague and I, with our respective lawyers in between, successfully finalized our divorces. I received a substantial amount of compensation from the senior colleague's wife. She has suggested reducing the amount, but I never hinted at accepting any reduction. Rumors of my ex-husband's infidelity spread at his workplace, but because he had to make payments for compensation and child support, he couldn't quit. Since my ex-husband's company dealt with products for women, it seemed he had made many female colleagues his enemies. As a result, he was often assigned warehouse duties instead of sales positions. One day, my ex-husband was hiding and smoking inside the warehouse. The supervisor called out to check if anyone was there, but my ex-husband, who didn't want to get caught, stayed silent and ended up being locked inside the warehouse for the day. No matter how much he pounded, the soundproofing prevented his cries from being heard. Locked in a place with no water supply or anything else, my ex-husband was found by the security guard who came for the night patrol 6 hours later. Rumor has it he accidentally wet himself. With the gossip spreading, my ex-husband understandably resigned from the company. Now he's apparently working multiple part-time jobs and living with his mom. By the way, his senior colleague's ex-wife, her parents paid the compensation all at once for her, and now she's being made to do manual labor in a company run by relatives. Once she tried to escape and roll back to her ex-husband's place, but her compatibility with her former mother-in-law was terrible. They were arguing loudly, and the police warned them. In the end, she was taken back to her parents' house. Honestly, even hearing such a story, I couldn't muster any sympathy. I couldn't help but think, you reap what you sow. As for me, I used the qualifications I obtained before marriage and found a new job. Fortunately, once my daughter separated from my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law, her bedwetting quickly improved. It seems she made new friends right away at the new nursery. She would even take a friend who had an accident to the bathroom and get them a pair of underwear from the changing shelf. There are times when she gently supports them, as the teacher told me. I felt happy sensing my daughter's kindness and resilience. She has overcome difficult times. I am proud to have a daughter who is kind to others.
Dahlia, what a lovely name. I love flowers. I think we'll get along just fine. These were the words my mother-in-law said to me when I met her for the first time. My husband and I went to visit his family before our marriage. My first impression of her was that she was really cheerful and friendly. She was younger than my own mother, so it felt more like having a slightly older sister than a mother-in-law. I was sure that we'd get along well in the future. I thought things like mother-in-law problems were just something you read on Reddit. But after getting married, I realized that the person from back then was just a facade. My name is Dahlia. I've been married to Jack for almost a year now. Right after we got married, we started living with his mother Judy at their family home. Initially, we had planned to remain at the apartment where we'd been living together. But Judy asked us to move in with her, citing her weakened strength and the comfort it would bring. Jack was unsure about the request at first. Living together all of a sudden might be tough for you. You'll probably not feel at home. I hadn't seen her true nature yet at that time. In my mind, she was just a light-hearted and caring mother-in-law, so I had no concern. I'm worried about her too, so I don't mind at all. Jack remained skeptical about it, but I genuinely cared about her well-being. Besides, it wasn't just me. He was periodically worried about her too. So I accepted the idea, hoping it would reduce the burden on everyone. Looking back, my decision at that time was a mistake, because I prioritized their feelings over my own. I had no idea that I'd end up experiencing what I did. It was about a week into our new living arrangement. Jack had told me before our marriage that he wanted children and preferred me to be a homemaker. So I started working part-time at a nearby supermarket and spent the rest of my days at home with Judy. Then she suddenly said, "Listen, Dahlia, I'm entrusting you with all the household chores from now on." I was taken aback and asked, "What do you mean?" "I mean, it's clear, isn't it? I'll let you marry my son, so it's only natural that you do all the housework. Your part-time job is basically not even work, so you can manage it, right?" When we first started living together, we had agreed to divide the chores between us, and Jack had even offered to help on his days off. Well, we did talk about sharing them, didn't we? I mean, even though it's part-time, I'm working. In response, she glared at me and raised her voice. Don't talk back to me. I allowed my precious son to marry you. You need to at least listen to what I say. You're a terrible daughter-in-law. I was left speechless by her sudden outburst. I didn't see this hidden side of her coming. Her initial kindness was just a facade. I was more surprised than intimidated or upset and was frozen in place. What are you daydreaming about? I told you to handle the housework. Get on with it. Do the laundry or clean up already. She shooed me out of the living room. Honestly, I think I could have argued back if I wanted to. But it had only been a week since I got married, and I reassured Jack multiple times before we agreed to live together. So I couldn't muster up the courage to defy her since it was my choice. From that point on, her harassment toward me became more and more insidious. It started with just the occasional passive-aggressive comment like, make sure to clean up, or have dinner ready before Jack comes home, when we were alone in the house. Around 6 months into our marriage, she began to escalate things. I can't eat this heavy, strong flavored food. Are you trying to kill me? She threw away the meal I had prepared. She was also never happy with the way I did the laundry, from how I washed it to how I folded it. She'd demand, do it again, and made me rewash clothes I had just finished. It wasn't snide remarks or complaints anymore. It felt like she was just looking for any excuse to nitpick and criticize me. I wasn't even allowed to sit and relax for a moment. If I finished cleaning and tried to have a cup of coffee to take a break, she would immediately start berating me. Hey, what are you lounging around for? Why don't you polish some shoes or something? You're such a lazy girl. I might need to spread the word about this during the next church meeting. She threatened to spread rumors about me indirectly. In fact, she had already been talking quite negatively about me to people in the community. I often felt their disapproving glances and hushed conversations when I was out and about in the town. When I was cleaning the yard, Judy would make sure to speak loud enough for me to hear. Jeez, Daddy is so lazy. She won't do anything unless I tell her, and she can't even do it perfectly no matter how many times I instruct her. She's hopeless, you know. I wish I had a better daughter-in-law. I overheard her saying such things in a loud voice. She knew that I could hear her as she left the house when I started cleaning the yard, deliberately talking loudly to the neighbors and painting me as incompetent. One day, Jack had to go on a 3-day business trip. Judy acted like a loving mother and never made snide comments to me in front of him. In fact, she treated me kindly. Since he only saw her being nice to me, he thought our relationship was reasonably good. I'll be away for 3 days, but you and Mom should be fine, right? You seem to get along well. If anything comes up, just give me a call. With that, he left for his trip. Objectively looking at it, you might wonder why I didn't just tell him about the harassment and leave. But I really loved him, and despite Judith's behavior, she was his mother. It was a fact that he was concerned about her as she was getting weaker year by year, So I genuinely thought it was better for me to endure and stay together to alleviate his worries. That was why I kept quiet. I thought if I couldn't bear it any longer, I would explain it to him. Until that day. The night Jack went on his business trip, Judy, as usual, told me to prepare dinner. When I started getting ready, I heard some commotion coming from the front door. I stopped what I was doing in the kitchen and peeked in that direction. To my surprise, Judy had brought a few friends back with her. Upon seeing me, she said, "Oh, Delia, you insisted on treating my friends to a homemade meal, so I brought them all with me. Now, hurry up and get it ready." I never mentioned anything like that before. Besides, I had assumed it would be just the two of us for dinner, so I hadn't prepared enough food. Judy, you never told me that you wanted to invite your friends over. What are you talking about? You said you want to treat them to your special cooking because Jack isn't here today, didn't you? That's why I brought them here, she said with a smug grin. Everyone, come on in. I'll have something ready for you in no time, she announced and ushered them into the living room, where they began taking their seats. Even though she wanted me to have something ready, I couldn't whip up a proper meal on such short notice. There weren't even enough necessary ingredients. I don't have enough stuff, so I'll go shopping now. Upon hearing this, she glared at me. What are you saying now? Everyone's waiting. You've already prepared, right? Serve the meal now. That was just impossible. I thought the dinner was only for us as usual, so there was not enough food. Sorry. She sighed and exchanged glances with her friends. To think you'd embarrass me in front of everyone. Never mind, we'll just order some pizza. Then she called the restaurant for delivery. Of course, there was no pizza for me. In the end, she seems to enjoy the impromptu party until late at night. After everyone left, she demanded, "You embarrassed me in front of my friends. Pay for the pizza and wine." And with that, she demanded a total of $150 from me. I couldn't accept that and refused to pay. But the next day, the $200 that should have been in my wallet was gone. When I confronted her about it, she said, "I settled for $200, so you should be grateful." I didn't get an apology from her, and she didn't show any signs of remorse. Instead, she left the house to go and talk bad about me at the church. Her attitude was finally too much for me to bear. I was determined to get revenge. I wanted to do something spectacular, so I got to work immediately. The next day, I decided to invite some of my friends in the neighborhood over for coffee and cake. I had always been fond of flowers and had my own garden in the backyard. This led me to interact with women of similar age at the church quite frequently. They had previously expressed an interest in seeing the garden I nurtured, so I invited them to come and see it. My garden was located just next to the patio, and I occasionally used it to entertain guests. If we stayed in the back, Judy wouldn't notice. So I put my plan into action. I was sure that she would put on an act and play the role of a good mother-in-law if she found out I had friends over. To show her true nature to a third party, it was crucial that she didn't know people were at the house. On the day of the operation, she had gone to a flower arranging class with her friends. In her absence, I enjoyed some quality time with my guests. They praised my flowers. We had delicious cake, and I had a pleasant time for the first time in a while. After a while, Judy returned home. I excused myself and went to greet her at the front entrance. I decided to play the role of a timid daughter-in-law. "Hi, Judy. How was your class?" She made an obviously displeased face and said, "I told you to polish the shoes every day, but you still haven't. You've been slacking off again." "Well, I was a bit busy today," she sneered in response. "Oh, sure. You're always making excuses, neglecting housework, and can't even polish shoes. Your fancy shoes are so dirty, so I threw them away for you." "Threw them away?" I hurried to check the shoe closet in the hallway. As dreaded, the pair Jack had brought me for me recently was missing. Seeing my reaction, she started cracking up. "You really didn't notice, huh? But you got what you deserved, you know. It's your fault for being a useless daughter-in-law. You don't do anything, you parasite." Then she grabbed a shoehorn that was nearby and began hitting me with it. "Please stop it," I pleaded in tears. "Shut up, you worthless woman. Get a divorce and get out." She was very dismissive. Then, in the next moment, someone chimed in. "Oh my goodness, that's too crass." That's her mother-in-law, right? If I had to deal with someone like that, I couldn't stand it. Huh? She hadn't even realized they were guests all along, and she looked bewildered as she stood there. They started leaving one by one, saying, "See you later, Dahlia," and hanging there while heading out from the patio. In the end, I succeeded in exposing Judy's true nature to the people in our community. I never expected to be hit by a shoehorn, though. "I'm sorry for this. I'll explain everything later." I apologized to them as they left. Judy remained completely frozen next to me. Soon after, the front door opened, and Jack returned earlier than expected. "What are you guys doing?" While Judy was desperately trying to make excuses, I spoke plainly. "Honey, I can't stay in this house anymore." "Huh?" My sudden statement left him stunned. Judy was glaring at me with intense hostility. I told him everything on the spot, occasionally adding some acting with tears. "Actually, Judy has been bullying me all this time. The day you left for a business trip, she ordered me to serve food to her friends without my consent, and I was shamed. And today, she even hit me in front of my friends with a shoehorn." Jack turned bright red, trembling with anger. "What the heck? Are you kidding me? What do you think you're doing to my wife?" he yelled at Judy. She probably didn't expect me to reveal everything to him right then and there. She just turned pale, had tears in her eyes, and remained silent without defending herself. "Once we find a place, we are moving out immediately. Just stay away from us," he declared to cut ties with her. She frantically apologized to him. "I'm sorry, it's not what you think. I just felt sad because I felt like you were taken away from me." He had no patience for it and replied, "Apologize to her before me. You're really beyond redemption as a human being. I'm disgusted." That really knocked her down. From then on, she didn't try to talk to me until we moved out of the house. After about 2 weeks, we left and started our new life as a couple. Judy's actions have spread throughout the community due to my friends. It seems she became an outcast at the church and in the neighborhood. Now, she no longer has friends as before, and people are gossiping about her behind her back. When I heard about this from a friend, I told Jack. She brought it on herself. We don't have to be involved with her anymore, so don't worry about it. I'm a bit concerned about her, but I'm at peace to be living alone with Jack now. If she genuinely apologizes in the future, I might consider forgiving her. But for now, I want to enjoy our private time together.
Why don't you serve each side dish on individual small plates? My son, daughter, and I all put our heads in at my angry mother-in-law. My name is Sarah. I'm a 46-year-old housewife. I have a son and a daughter, Fred in high school and Amy in junior high school. My husband, Nathan, is a 40-year-old office worker. My husband's father passed away after a year and a half of illness. We had talked about the future before my father-in-law passed away, and my husband told me that he didn't want his mother to be left living on her own. However, living together with my mother-in-law was nothing but hell for me. First of all, there was the food. We used to serve our meals in the platter style, which is to put each dish on a big plate and serve ourselves to our liking. This was because it was easier for me to clean up, and also because we each ate what we wanted to eat, which resulted in less leftovers. My daughter loves vegetables, and my son loves meat. But my mother-in-law could not stand that way. It's like you're feeding a dog. The first thing she complained about was how the food was served. Can't you at least put it in individual small plates and add a garnish or something? She would say. I don't know anyone who goes that far with meals at home. Well, I did. Go on and ask my son. I asked my husband, and he agreed that what she said was correct. I tried to make it look as requested, but she kept saying that the direction of the garnish placement was wrong, or that this side dish should not be served this way, etc. And so it went for 3 meals. In the morning, we used to eat those supermarket bread with butter. I can't believe you serve bread with all those additives. Can't you prepare something better than that? She would say. What about salad and fruit? One after another, she orders me like that. And every time she did that, I would say, I really can't imagine anybody that goes to such lengths at home. But every time my mother-in-law would repeatedly follow with, I used to do it. Ask my son. When I asked my husband about it, he said he was sure she had done it. And it doesn't stop there. Why don't you wash the screens? Her monthly phrase is said as always. Don't you wax the floor once a month? If I followed all these rules, I would have to get up at 4 a.m. and go to bed after midnight. I was exhausted. I couldn't take it anymore. I can't believe that you've done all this, I mutter. You're a housewife, right? You're supposed to be the keeper of the house, keeping it clean and preparing meals perfectly. Otherwise, you're nothing but parasite, sucking off my son's money. She would scold me. A parasite? That's terrible. That's a terrible thing to say to a person. I don't need to say this, but my husband is totally incapable of doing housework. So we couldn't share the cleaning, laundry, or meal preparation, and I have been in charge of all of them. When I invite him out for dinner, both my mother-in-law and my husband say, eating out is too tiring. So, naturally, we have to eat at home. I have to do cleaning, laundry, and daily routine that my mother-in-law asks me to do, and I had no time to relax. If I mention even the slightest complaint, what are you saying? All I can say is that you're trying to be lousy. If you don't want to be called a parasite, just do it properly. I received my mother-in-law's attack of words at once. I felt my patience running out, so I asked my husband again. Your mother-in-law says that, but I don't think there is enough time to do everything she says. Did your mother really do everything? My husband rubs his chin as if recalling. Yes, she sure did. We each ate with small bowls of side dishes, and I remember there were several kinds of bread. I mean, I've seen my mom do it, so it's hard to tell what a child likes and dislikes when it's on a big plate, and it's hard to get them to eat properly. So I guess Mom's right. Anyway, what she says is correct, so make sure to listen to her. He says, No, he can't be serious. There's not enough time to get all of it done. Just as I was thinking that, an incident happened. I went shopping with my husband, and when we came back, there was a reform contractor at our house. What are you doing? We're blocking the ventilation fan in the bathroom, my mother-in-law said. What? I had no idea what she was talking about, so I let out a crazy voice. Sure enough, the man had put something like a board on the fan. Wait, if you do that, the smell will be trapped. That's impossible. Then my mother-in-law continued, Whose fault is it that I have to do this? Huh? What? Me? My voice cracked. Yes, it's your fault. I don't get it at all. What? I've never done anything to the toilet. No matter how many times I warn you, you only clean it once every 2 days. Huh? If you clean it every day, it shouldn't smell. In other words, we wouldn't need a ventilation fan. I told you so many times, but you wouldn't listen. So I decided to make an environment where you'd have to clean it. Huh? I was so shocked that I dropped the shopping bags in my hands. Hey, Nathan, this is just a dream. It's a nightmare. I shuddered and pointed at the scene to my husband, who was standing beside me. No way. That's too much, Mom. I nodded my head in agreement with my husband. That's what was supposed to happen. But... What? My husband scratched his head in annoyance. If my mother is saying the truth, why don't you clean it every day then? Then he sighed. You know, my coworker said that after a few years, wives learn and follow their mother-in-law's ways. Listen to my mom and hurry up and learn her ways. Who the hell is this coworker? I'll never forgive him. I was completely out of control. Enough! I've been called a parasite, and I've been told I have to do whatever you say. I can't do this. It was like a dam had burst. I'm going to leave. I ran out of the house. My husband was like, I don't need 2 people doing the housework. My mother-in-law was like, I'm glad we got rid of the parasite. I was worried about my son and daughter, but they are old enough to understand the situation. So they said, do what you and Dad want to do. When I asked them which one they would follow, they chose the one that was more lenient to them, saying, I would rather have a messy but reassuring mother than a father who is fussy about rules. So, I'm divorced now, so please let me stay. I called my own parents. Even if there are more people living in the house, the size of the house won't change. You can only use 1 room, okay? And like that, they gave me a rough welcome. They welcomed me with open arms, saying, It's no big deal if we have 3 more people in the family. Thanks to this, my children and I moved into my parents' house without a hitch. And while doing housework, I looked for a job. I had no work experience, but I got a job as a caregiver at a nursing home. Everything went smoothly. It felt nice. I have to do some heavy lifting sometimes, but I enjoy talking to the elderly at the nursing home every day. Maybe I should have gotten a job sooner, I think sometimes, but I didn't have that choice in my life with my ex-husband. When I think about my current situation, I wonder if my guardian angel had guided me here. 3 years later, I received a call on my phone. I had been working as a caregiver for 3 years already, just when my job was going well. I was too busy to notice it, but when I looked at my history, there were dozens of incoming calls that day alone. The caller was my ex-husband. I knew from the moment I left that house that this would happen after a few years. After work, I had no choice but to call him back. Then, "Sarah, help me, Sarah." I heard a pathetic voice over the phone. "What's wrong? It's been a long time, eh?" I tried to act nonchalant, but he mumbled, "Mom is," in a fading voice. "What's wrong? Did she fall ill or something?" I asked. From that point on, he was so frenzied that I couldn't understand what he was saying. We decided to talk in person. I asked him to come over to my place. That weekend, my ex-husband and mother-in-law came over. Those two, myself, my daughter, my son, and my parents sat around the table. My mother-in-law's back was straight as always. The first thing she said was, "I don't mind if you don't come back." "Then why did you come here?" I thought to myself, but my ex-husband stopped her. "Actually, we are here to..." My ex-husband opened his banking app and showed us the balance of $13. I bursted out laughing. "Oh my gosh, it's less than my hourly pay," my son said. "You weren't a spendthrift, were you? When we got divorced, you had about $60,000 in savings," I asked. "That's right, but then, as soon as you were gone, the money disappeared." I guess my husband finally figured out what was really going on. "Haven't you been secretly using up the money?" My mother-in-law still refuses to accept her position, tries to put the blame on me. "Of course not. You know where all the money went, don't you?" I looked at the balance in the bank account and my mother-in-law's face alternately. My mother-in-law stammered. This mother-in-law is a jerk to ask me if I haven't used the money, even though she knows that she's been spending it herself. While I thought that, I snicker and say, "You finally noticed?" to my ex-husband. Now, it's time to break the story. When we divorced and I left the house, I actually was thinking, if I leave, this house will fall apart within a few years. Let's take the time to explain. "Huh?" My mother-in-law raised her voice as if she had no idea. "First of all, we'll have some variety of freshly baked bakery bread and pastries in the morning. You've just been cutting them to serve. Salads and fruits are brought cut up and put on the plate as well. 100% fresh juice is bought in a carton. And for lunch and dinner, it's a simple job of plating the prepared foods bought at the deli section. Even during the holiday gatherings, I've noticed. It was all from that luxury supermarket nearby. The food from that deli section has the garnish, right?" My mother-in-law is still thinking of possible excuses she could make. "I've put each one on individual small plates and bowls, unlike you." "Does that mean you've done it just by plating them? That's not right." My mother-in-law choked on her words. I continued. "And about cleaning the screens and waxing, I don't think those were amateur cleaning techniques." "What?" This time, it was my ex-husband who raised his voice in surprise. Then, Mom, how did you... It's written in the bank history, isn't it? There, once a month, on a regular basis, were the words house cleaning. You left the screens and wax to the house cleaners, right? Mother-in-law, that's not doing anymore. I questioned my mother-in-law sternly. Then my mother-in-law started mumbling something like, I was just trying to keep the house neat. I sighed. What was your father's job again? A lawyer. Well, a lawyer's wife should be able to live with such extravagance. I mean, that's probably why you've been able to do it all this time. But now your husband passed away, and you know your son is just an ordinary office worker, right? Using a house cleaner, buy prepared foods every day, there's no way you can make it financially with that kind of lifestyle. My mother-in-law's head finally exploded at my righteous argument. I have a sensitive taste. I don't want to fill my stomach with bad food. Yes, whatever. So, don't you have more to say? I grinned and urged my husband to speak up. Perhaps the most excruciating part was that thing. My ex-husband forced out a thin voice. The bathroom. It stinks. Oh, yes. Here it comes. I shouted in joy. My parents covered their faces as their shoulders shook at my bizarre reaction. Both of them tried to look angry, but I could see that they were holding back their laughter with all their might. What? So, why do you think this happened? I tried to encourage him to say it. Because I'm the one cleaning the toilet? Nope, incorrect. Wait, but didn't your mother used to clean it every day? Why didn't you do it now? Then my mother-in-law, as if she had come to her senses, was furious. There is no way I would clean such a dirty place. That was the answer I expected. So, you already know what's the deal, don't you? Why that bathroom was cleaned every day until your father passed away. Yeah. My ex-husband's father was a lawyer and used part of his home as his office. The assistant who worked there cleaned the bathroom in the house every day while she was there. You mentioned that you cleaned the toilets every day, right? But that assistant only worked on weekdays, right? So, he only did it twice a week, on Saturday and Sunday. I was doing the cleaning once every 2 days, and you were complaining so much. You wanted to inspect my cleaning, or lack of thereof, by blocking the ventilation fan to see if there was a smell in the toilet, right? If the smell was still there, you were trying to bully me. As you probably already know, it's impossible to make a toilet completely odorless. That's why there are exhaust fans and windows in the bathrooms. If you block them up, of course they will smell. My mother-in-law and my ex-husband are so ignorant. So, I went in to close up our talk. You called me a parasite who sucks off your son's money, but it turns out you were more of a parasite. And I guess it was fine when you're a parasite sponging off your lawyer husband, but the son, who's a mere office worker, was too weak to sponge off of. As a housewife, you're supposed to be the keeper of the house, keeping it clean and preparing meals perfectly. The fact that you were able to maintain that with just money and instruction is a miracle in itself. I really admire my father-in-law's patience and determination. And the inheritance that you used up. You should be thankful for me for keeping that inheritance while raising 2 children until we divorced. There was silence for a while. And then my ex-husband said, Mom, apologize. It's all here in the banking history. Apologize that your standard of living was wrong. That you weren't the one doing all the work, and all you did was buy the food while pretending like you did it and earn the respect. My mother-in-law is shaking with her head down. My ex-husband continued, You owe her an apology. If we don't get her to come back, this house won't stand anymore. Because you've got only $13, right? My son interrupted from the side. My mother-in-law shuddered and clenched her teeth, and she had her voice escaping from between her teeth. Please, come back. I'm sorry. Is this enough for you? I smiled back at them. No way, Jose. What? My ex-husband and mother-in-law shouted at once. I apologize to you. My mother-in-law turned her face red and shouted, but I ignored her and said, It's up to me whether I forgive you or not, and whether I go back or not. I wanted you to apologize, but I never said that I would forgive in return once you apologized. And to my ex-husband I say, There's no benefit for me to go back. You are guilty of not realizing your mother was acting wrong and putting the blame on me. Why don't you go back to your stinky bathroom and eat your luxurious deli? And with that, I kicked them out of our house. Now I'm the breadwinner, running the household with my aging parents and my 2 children. My ex-husband left his mother when the money was all drained up. My ex-mother-in-law apparently lives in our dirty room, and people can see her garbage overflowing through the glass window of the room that once used to be her husband's office. Today, I ride my bicycle to work as always. Through this job, I met a man who is also a caregiver. He isn't a picky eater, and he is such a good eater. When I told him that we serve our food on a big plate, he laughed and said, I think I can finish it all by myself. He also is able to cook his own meals. When I visit his house, he serves me a big bowl of fried rice, his specialty. Hey, you know I'm a lady, right? But it's so delicious, I can't deny it. From now on, I want to spend a peaceful life with this man, who is able to gobble up the food from the same big plate as me.